Hello everyone and welcome back. This is our actually very final episode of this production masterclasses series. We hope you enjoyed it so far and you learned new things. If you don't know who we are, well, you probably need to go back and check episode 1, 2, and 3. You're gonna find the description below you're gonna find the links in the description below. Or you can just subscribe to the Creator Academy YouTube channel to, check out the other 3 episodes. So in this series, that was, the goal was really to help you guys improve the production quality and value of your work on YouTube. And what we did on the first week, we talked about camera and sound. On the second week, we talked about lighting and importance of lighting. Last week we talked about basically the more advanced techniques of cinematography, and today Michelle and I are here to talk to you about producing on a shoestring, because in order to create amazing videos you don't need to spend a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what this series has all been about. So in a way, you can view this one as a summary of everything that we've covered so far. We're also going to throw in some new little bits of information. I'm going to talk a little bit about grip equipment, because I really wanted to talk about it last week in the cinematography session, but we didn't quite have enough time. And just basically, hopefully we'll be touching on a few things that are really just going to finalise that knowledge that you've got about taking the productions you're already creating, or if you're just new starting out, and taking them to the next level.
As always, you can ask your questions in the comments below, and Michelle will get back to you later this evening after the live stream is over.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as I said, if you haven't watched the whole series, please do, because you can get a chance to receive a letter, like a certification letter, like a letter of completion from YouTube, certifying that you completed the whole package of videos.
Yeah, and I think it's really important that you have seen all 4, because it's going to be 4 questions to get that, and they're going to be questions based on what I've talked about. So if you are coming to us late and this is the first one you've seen, go back. They're all, as Marco said, they're all listed in the description below this video. So hopefully you'll engage with all of them and you'll learn a bit more about increasing the production value of your content on a shoestring.
In the previous episodes, we talked a lot about, like expensive camera, DSLRs, kind of professional lightings, and, big microphones and stuff. But there's something that you can really do on a shoestring.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people, when they get started out in video, it's very tempting to immediately invest a lot in your kit, and you really become kind of an addict. The more kit you buy, the more you want, and it's building up that sort of stable of just stuff really that you've got at your disposal.
A bit intimidating.
Yeah, I think it can be. There's so many cameras, not just Canon. We've talked a lot about Canon cameras in this series, but there's different things like the Sony range of cameras, the mirrorless cameras, not just DSLRs. You've got your handy cams. We talked about GoPros, even webcams. I mean, last week we touched on Google Hangouts. So we really want to just kind of tie all of it in and talk about ways that you can start with really not a lot of investment and still make really great content. So probably the best place to start is going to be cameras. You're going to have one, whether you like it or not, if you want to record content. So the first thing that you've probably got, if you're on YouTube, you've got a webcam. You've got a laptop or a phone. Almost everyone's got some kind of device now that's got a front-facing camera or, a back camera that you can sort of frame and then run into the shot. So I said last week, touching on cinematography, it's not just about expensive lighting. It's not about just being able to control every setting on your camera. Sometimes it's just about using what you've got and really starting to get your content out there. We're really trying to encourage people to have HD content, but I think that's doable now with things like HD webcams, with things like your iPhone. You should be able to reach that level where everything you're shooting is in HD, and even if it's 720, it's still HD. It's going to look really good, and it's just not going to have that sort of softness that you find SD video has when you watch it online, and it just kind of looks a bit like, is it really sharp? It seems a bit grainy. So whatever camera you've got, there are different ways that you can really enhance the production value, and we're going to get on to talking about sound as well, because as we talked about in the very first episode, sound is kind of the one thing that you can't really forgive skimping on, if you will. Like, we can get away with slightly out of focus shots. You know, it's not something that the eye immediately says to the brain, oh, something's not quite right here. But if you've ever been in a cinema and the sound cuts out, you really notice it. It's something that really takes you out of the enjoyment of that video. So sound is something that we're going to touch on as well. But let's get straight into it with cameras. Because we started talking about the DSLR family, we're going to go straight into that. So what we've got here is the 60D and the 5D3. Now, actually, I would probably go in and say the 60D is about a mid-range DSLR. It's, you know, I don't know, originally it was about £900. It's come down in price quite a lot to about 600 now. But there is a cheaper alternative to this. This is cool because it does have that flip-out screen that if you are vlogging, you know, that's a really helpful thing to have, to be able to monitor yourself. Turn that around. You're going to be able to see exactly what you're framing up on. And it's really important because I have said before, I do want you to concentrate on your framing. If you're not going to be able to spend a lot of money on lights or lenses, then have your framing there, have something that's, you know, well composed and balanced. And it's really going to give you just that creative edge over other people making content. So if you're not going to get a 60D, Canon do a 550D. I don't think they're producing new ones anymore, but you can get them secondhand. You know, there's quite a lot on the market. When these DSLRs started to come out, you know, about 5-6 years ago, they really hit the market in a big way. We hadn't seen interchangeable lens cameras, which is what these are. Obviously, this one doesn't have a lens on it. They're cameras that don't have a fixed lens. Unlike our Handycam there, or our GoPro, which we've got, those cameras, you got your lens, you're going to just stick with that. They might have a zoom, the GoPro doesn't, but it does have a crop function, so you can push in slightly. But you have the ability to choose whatever kind of lens you want with these cameras. And that was really a revolutionary thing when they first came out. And it still is in a big way because it's putting a cinema aesthetic into the hands of the everyday consumer. So you can find things like the 550D secondhand, use 600D, that was the successor to that. In some markets they're called the T2i or the T3i. So you might look out for that if you are going to get them secondhand. They might sometimes be listed under a slightly different name. Now obviously, if you are going to buy those cameras, there are going to be some things that aren't quite up to the same standard as, for example, our 5D3 here, which is really the big daddy of like full frame DSLR cameras. So I had a 550D or a T2i, and it's, for one thing, it has a cropped sensor. We talked a little bit about this in last week's session on cinematography. So what that does is it just means that you're not, it's a smaller sensor. I won't show you it because I don't want to damage the camera, but you can see examples of this online, and we can put links underneath this live feed as well for you to see diagrams of those sensor sizes. And it just means it's smaller, it's not going to be able to absorb enough light. If you think of it as like a cloth and the light is water, you've got a smaller one, it's going to get wet faster, you're going to use up all of that light balance. So with something like a 5D3, you're really able to expose up to those high ISOs before it gets noisy. Something like the 60D or the smaller ones, the 550, the 600D, it's not going to be able to have that same capacity to retain light information. You're not going to be able to push it so much into the higher levels of ISO before that grain comes in. So those are things that you do want to think about. If you think you're going to be shooting in a situation where there's not a lot of light, it might be worth trying to go for a slightly more expensive camera, something like the 5D3. Another really great camera at the moment is the 6D, which is essentially the 5D3 in a cheap body. It's the exact same sensor, it's still full frame, it's got really good low light, but the buttons are slightly different, there's fewer of the buttons, and the body probably isn't slightly as durable. So you really want to do your research, and Canon's got loads of information out there about all of these cameras. And the really great thing about YouTube is it is a community. You can ask each other, you can check out people's videos. There's tons of videos out there comparing what these cameras can do, low light tests. You know, just think about the application that you're going to use these cameras for. You don't have to go out and drop, you know, £1,500 on a 5D3. You can easily get something like a 550. I would think that you probably get a 550 now secondhand for about £350. Not too much of an investment, and you've got enough left over that you can start to build up your lens collection. Now, lens-wise, things do get complicated because there are literally hundreds of different kinds of lenses you can get, and they're not all being manufactured anymore. I said in the last session on cinematography, I have a collection of Russian lenses that are about 50 years old now, and I just got that collection at an antiques fair, and each one was probably about £20, but those lenses still function really well. They're not quite as sharp as a brand new L series Canon lens, but these lenses are very pricey. I mean, this 85mm, it's a really good lens, but you're talking about, you know, £800 for something like this.
So that's about like €1,000.
Yeah, something like €1,000
for our viewers.
And it's just for one lens as well. So it's you know, it's designed to be doing those portrait shots, those close-up shots. And if you really want to build up a big kit of lenses, you're probably not going to go straight into the L series of primes, but there are other primes that you can get. So we've talked in the past couple of weeks about Rokinon and Samyang. They are originally a Polish manufactured lens brand, and they are really good quality prime lenses. They're still glass, so you've got that nice sharp image that you don't get with the plastic lenses. And you do have to watch out for that because some of the lower end Canon lenses are made of plastic and not glass, and they don't have that same sharp definition in HD. So, for example, one of the first lenses a lot of people pick up is the 50mm 1.8. Now that is still a nice shallow f-stop. You can still open up quite wide, a 1.8. It's, you know, much more than our zoom can do here at f4. So you're going to be able to get that really nice shallow look to your images. But it is a plastic lens. The body's plastic, and the glass elements are actually plastic as well. So it's not going to give you that tack sharpness that you're going to get with a glass lens, like for example the Samyang and the Rokinon. Now those are cinema lenses, so what that means is they're not zooms, they're fixed, and also you change the exposure on the barrel. Now we don't have one here to demonstrate, but if you are familiar with DSLRs, or if you've seen episode 1 from about 3 weeks ago now, it is very rare to change the aperture on these lenses via the lens barrel. It's a very old-fashioned technique that comes from cinema when you wanted to do a manual exposure pull, which is, say, if you've got a tracking shot and you're moving through a scene from light to dark, you're going to want to open up that lens as you move. And just doing that on a camera is going to be really fiddly, especially if it's on a dolly. It's going to be virtually impossible. So they're really cool lenses for that. And actually, I've got quite a big collection of those because I do a lot of work that really needs primes rather than zooms. And for the price, you're talking for their 85, probably about £220, so significantly less. I don't know what that would be in euro.
500?
Yeah, yeah, probably a bit less than that. Yeah,
400?
yeah, probably about, you know, 300 to 400 euros. So significantly less than the Canon series of primes. So with all of these decisions, you know, you're always going to be making some kind of sacrifice. And the main sacrifice with that is if you are controlling your exposure on the barrel of the lens and you do want to use your camera for something else besides video, like photography, your camera's not going to be able to do that. It doesn't have the chip that I can demonstrate on this lens. So when you open up the back of this lens, I won't touch it because they're quite sensitive, but these gold bars here, that's basically a chip. So that helps your camera connect to your lens, and it tells your camera what settings you've got. It can open up your aperture, let more light in if you want, give you that shallower depth of field. You can't do that with these prime lenses, the Samyangs and the Rokinons. They don't have that electronic technology. They're just designed for you to control everything on the barrel. But what it does do is it gives you more of an understanding of lenses as a cinematographer. You know, you don't have somebody making those decisions for you. The camera can't override it. You can't set it to auto. You've got to keep it on manual and control everything yourself. So if you're willing to take that step, then it's something that I would really recommend. You know, for you even, Marco.
Oh, wow.
I know you've been learning a lot in this series, so
yeah, I'm
you know, think about it.
But start my own channel, yeah.
I think you should, yeah. No, but yeah, I would really suggest looking at the lens options out there, not just those ones. Like I said, the kinds of Russian lenses I've got. I've also got some toy lenses. I'm sure a lot of you have probably heard of the Lomo cameras, you know, the Holga, the Mini Diana, those kinds of cameras. You can buy those lenses that do fit on your DSLR. I've got the Holga lens for my 5D3, and what it comes with is a selection of sort of plastic filters. So you've got like a rose tinted filter, and they're really cool. Like some of them have splitters on there, which basically change the perception of what's coming into your lens. So you've got a hexagon splitter, and it just divides the lens into different lines, and you end up with an image that looks like a kaleidoscope. Now, obviously, you're not going to shoot your average everyday beauty vlog with that, but you're going to use it for creative stuff. I mean, particularly if you're into product videos, into unboxing videos, those kinds of more arty short films, you're definitely going to look into those lenses, and they're so cheap because they're made of plastic. Just don't expect to be getting a pin sharp image out of those, because you definitely won't. But if you're trying to build up a big collection and really experiment with your lenses at a very low cost, that's a really cool way to do it. So once you've got your camera and your lenses sorted, you're going to get thinking about sound. As we said earlier, it is massively important, and it's something that, you know, it does tend to get overlooked. We're going to recap a little bit of information here that we originally went over in episode 1, so do go back and check that if you've not seen it, because it probably goes into a little bit more depth in terms of sound. But if you want to start by passing me that one. So this is the Rode NTG2. It's a directional mic. It's generally designed for going either on top of your camera as an onboard mic or on the end of a boom pole as a directional mic. Now, this one, you can probably get that for about £150, which is, you know, fairly pricey for what it does, and it does need quite a lot of control. You do need to have an XLR input. So if you're shooting on something like a 5D3, you can get a converter for that that's going to take this 3-pin XLR and convert it into 3.5. But anytime that you're doing that with sound equipment, you run the risk of either having a loose connection or just degrading the quality of the sound. So you really want to take this into something that supports XLR instead, and that's where our recorders come in. Can you pass me the H4n? It's the big recorder.
Ooh, where's that?
Oh, it's actually in front of me.
Sorry.
Yeah, so we talked a bit about sound quality and how to maintain the highest sound quality in our episode 1. I'll just pass you those. Thank you. So this is the Zoom H4n. I'm going to talk about a couple of other devices. I don't have them here to show you, but again, we can put links to all of this below the feed once it goes out. So we've got Beach Tech and Juice Link. What they do, refer back to episode 1, I talked about pre-amplification, which basically allows you to monitor your levels, add gain, and not lose quality. So what the Beach Tech and the Juice Link devices do, they look a little bit like this, but they sit on top of your camera, whichever one you've got, and they feed directly into your camera. So the problem of shooting with something like this is you're going to have to sync your sound in post. You're probably not going to shoot from this directly into your camera, because this is more of an external, separate sound recording device. If you have something like a Juice Link or a Beach Tech preamp, you're going to be able to take that mic directly into your camera, put headphones on, monitor your sound. You're going to know you're getting good sound, and it's already going to be synced for you, and that's going to really save you time in the edit. Particularly if you end up shooting things like documentaries, anything long form, you really don't want to have to spend a long time syncing that sound, because it can be quite a pain. So it's worth the investment if you're thinking of going down that route. Longer form video making, definitely think about getting some kind of device where you're going to be able to get sound directly into your DSLR. The other option is, thank you, go with a camcorder. If you're interested in documentary, think about what's right for you. Some documentaries, they do shoot them on the DSLR. They have that nice cinematic look, especially if you've got something with a larger sensor like the 6D, like the 5D2, the 5D3. It's going to have that nice shallow depth of field. You're going to have that cinematic look where your subject is in the foreground nice and sharp and the background's all soft. We looked at that in the past couple of weeks. But most documentaries, you're going to be doing a lot of following people, a lot of zooming. It's about capturing the action as it happens. And if you're going to be making those kind of films, you're probably going to be thinking about something similar to either a GoPro or something like a handy cam. Now, we talked in episode 1 about GoPros. The newest GoPros now, they start at about £99, and that gives you 720p recording, which is still HD, and it looks really good. You can't really do slow motion on that. You can't do any of the higher resolutions that the later ones can do, but for £99 you can throw it on a surfboard and go crazy. So it's a really, really good investment, especially if you are into action shots. If you're a skate video maker, you really want to look at GoPros. They're brilliant for the price, and you know, for £99 virtually anyone could probably have that as even a second camera, just to give you a second angle. And that's something, again, if you're trying to look at amplifying the look of your films and saying, you know what, I spend a lot of time on these, but you don't want to spend a lot of money. If you do have something that gives you a cheap second angle, it's just a way that you can cut in. So even something like an iPhone, it's got a HD camera on it. This is the 5S, it even shoots slow-mo. You just have that somewhere on a cheap tripod, a cheap gobo, just attached somewhere, you can just tape it up. It's just giving you another angle that when you put your film together, you can cut to, and it says, you know what, I've got 2 cameras on this, I really thought about my production. So it's those little ways in which you can really enhance the look of your film. Now, we are going to go over to the studio because I'm just going to show you something not really to do with lighting, but to do with changing the look of your shots. So, let's do that. Now, here we are, we've still got our nifty 50 on. I'm just going to sharpen that shot up. Very nice. Okay. All right, so as you can see, it is now Christmas, and in the background of this shot, we've added a Christmas tree. Now, in the previous week's episodes, we've had kind of a similar background. We've always had our nice lamp, we've had a bit of foliage, but now we've added something extra. These shots, we've still got our basic 3-point lighting. If you don't know about it, please do revisit our episode on lighting. That was week 2. It's such an important thing to know, and if you know 3-point lighting, it's really going to give you that basic grounding to build on your lighting knowledge, play around with lighting. But we're keeping that set up for this because I'm actually just going to talk about a way that you can enhance the look of your films without spending really anything. So we just put a Christmas tree in here. You know, it's December the 4th, and we just think that's just an extra element that you can look at and that says you've really put some attention into your shots. We talked in last week's episode about a few actual examples of members of the YouTube community and where they shoot, how they frame their shots. And those are all things that don't cost anything. Once you've got your camera, you've got your lenses, even if you don't really have any lights, there are ways that you can enhance the production value of your shots without spending any money. So if you've got something like a Christmas tree in your shot and you're doing a Christmas themed episode, just put it in. Anything like that. We're shooting in a studio, so the walls are all a bit flat, but shoot by a window, use that daylight, shoot in an interior of a room. One thing that I really appreciate, and we did demonstrate this last week, so do check it out if you haven't seen it, shoot on a wide lens and have your subject quite close, and then show everything in the background. It gives you a massive amount of depth, and it just makes you look like you're shooting in a really big space, even if you aren't. It's a really great way of utilizing space. If you're filming in your bedroom or somewhere that's quite small and you just want to make it look grander, bring yourself closer to the camera, have your wide lens on, you're the subject, framed up in the foreground, and just show everything behind you. Now, we really did want to demonstrate some cheap lighting here, but we actually didn't have time to go out and get the Christmas lights. But one thing that you could have done in this shot, on that Christmas tree, pop some Christmas lights on there. It's a really nice way of adding a bit of colour to your shot, adding a bit of depth. Maybe you've got them blinking on and off. It's just an extra little touch. We talked a lot about depth in the last couple of episodes, and the fact that we've got this lamp there. We've put some candlesticks there as well. I'm not sure that you can quite see them on this 50mm lens, but they are there. And if you had some nice tall candles, again, it's just another way of getting some depth in. Now, because we are shooting on this 50mm and we've talked a little bit about getting that nice depth of field, having our foreground nice and sharp and the background nice and soft, one thing that you will get with those lights, if you did have Christmas lights or you did have candles, is something that we call bokeh, which is basically the shape of your aperture reflected back at you as an out of focus ring of light. So usually if you've got an old lens like my Russian lenses, it'll look like a little hexagon, and that's just the shape of the blades of the aperture, so kind of like the iris in your eye, just reflecting back the light that they're giving out. And it's a really nice way of adding that Christmassy touch, especially if you've got something like multicolored Christmas lights there. You don't really have to spend anything. It's probably something that you can find lying around, or you can get in a pound shop. In fact, I found battery powered lanterns in, you know, just like Lakeland or Tiger, those kinds of lights that you can take anywhere, even outside. So if you're shooting on the beach or if you're shooting a band session, you can use those lights without needing to worry about finding a power source. They're battery powered, stick them up in the background, out of focus. It's going to give you dynamism to your shot that you don't really have to spend a lot of money on. So we've demonstrated that. Let's go back to our seating. All right, so we touched on sound, but I didn't really get to finish the point. So we're going to talk a little bit more about these kinds of clip mics. Now, obviously, the mics that we've got, they are radio mics, and they can run quite expensive. I think these are Sennheiser G3s, which are probably going to set you back about £500 for a set. So you're probably not going to invest straight away into something like that. But what we did have in episode 1, and I'll talk about it again here, is the wired lav mic. Now, the principle is the same. You basically, when you get this, somebody's lost the clip, but I'll explain. When you get this, it's going to have a clip. You're just going to clip it on there. Put a little windshield on there if you're outside, or if you're inside you won't need it. And it's just going to give you that amplified sound. It's very directional. It's going to come straight from the speaker, and it's going to cut out some of that atmos that you really want to lose. Because as we said before, sound is quite difficult to fix in post. If you've recorded quiet sound and you bump that up in post, it's going to bump up everything else as well. And if you're outside or if you're near a window, that's going to be street traffic noise, it's going to be planes, just anything that you really don't want affecting the quality of your sound. This kind of light, it's literally about it's literally about £20 online, and it's just a way that you can not only give your audio an enhanced sound, but it looks more professional as well, I think. When you've got a clip mic on there, it looks like you've gone to the effort of thinking about your sound.
So about that, actually, feedback that we often get from creators is that it looks too professional for them.
Oh, you think so?
Especially if you're peering camera, like if you're a vlogger, for example. It's kind of weird for a YouTuber to have a mic here.
You know what, I'm hoping that now that people know how much it costs, they'll change their opinion about that.
I would actually recommend it for maybe someone who doesn't appear on the screen.
Yeah, I mean, that would be great.
So if you're doing a review or something, so it doesn't show, unless you don't care about showing.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. If you are doing voiceover for your videos, you don't necessarily have to appear in them. So for voiceover, I mean, you have a few more options, because if they're not going to see you, you can hold the mic. You can use that XLR-based NTG2 that we talked about. You can even just use a standard vocal mic for singing. Karaoke mic, whatever you might have in the house. You'd be surprised how much junk is helpful for film. I found all kinds of things, just bits of old gel, like we talked about ages ago. We talked about having just greaseproof paper as a diffusion filter for light, and those things are just really helpful to have. So yeah, you're right. If people are intimidated by wearing these kind of clip mics, don't worry about it. You don't have to. There's plenty of other ways that you can get really good sound on a budget. We'll talk about these Rode mics at the top as well. Now, this is a Rode Video Pro mic, and it's basically designed expressly for DSLR. You do use it on other cameras. I have talked a little bit about the Sony mirrorless cameras. They look kind of like DSLRs, a little bit smaller. So something like the A7S, you could take one of these mics into that. And basically what it does is just slightly amplifies your sound. It gives you a better quality of sound than what you're recording with this. Those cameras, they do have an inbuilt mic, but they pick up everything. And I don't know if you've ever shot with a stabilized zoom lens, but something like a 70-200 or even a 100mm macro, the noise is quite loud when you've got a stabilizer on, especially on the older models, the Mark 1 70-200 f2.8. Those lenses make a lot of noise when they're stabilizing. It's almost like gears grinding, and if you're just using in-camera sound, that's all you're going to hear, and you're just going to have to bump it even more to get vocals out of it. So something like this is much more directional. It's going to pick up whatever's in front of it. So it needs to be pointing at whoever's speaking. Again, if you are doing off-camera voiceover, you can take that either into your camera or directly into your laptop, because you don't really need to sync if it's voiceover. You can just put it wherever you want. So these, they vary in price, I think from about £40 upwards. I think the newest Pro one is a bit more expensive than that. It's probably about £150, but they start from about £40, and that's a pretty reasonable price to get some really good level of audio. Can I just get you to pop that over there? So I have referred a lot to post throughout these past 4 lessons, and obviously post just basically refers to whatever's happening after you've shot. So post-production, it's the process of editing and whatever you're going to do with your videos afterwards. Now, it doesn't have to be expensive. You do want to think about your editing, because it can add a lot of production value very cheaply. Once you've got your editing software paid for, you're pretty much going to learn one, master it, stick with it for a long time. So it's really worth investing in a decent non-linear editor, an NLE, something like Final Cut, something like Premiere Pro. That kind of editing software, it's going to give you the ability to really change your images. So if we think back to episode 2, I talked about getting your white balance as close to perfect as possible, so you're going to end up with an image that's nice and clean, it's nice and crisp, and doesn't really have any visual effects added to it in camera. Once you've got that image in your editing software, you can grade it, you can give it any kinds of look. So we're going to talk about a few cheaper options there. Probably the most famous ones being iMovie and Windows Movie Maker. Now we are trying to encourage you guys to use slightly more professional editing equipment. They are really great places to start though, and if you're just learning about editing, if at the moment you're pretty much hitting record and then stopping when you're done and uploading that as is, then start with those free apps, whether you're on Windows or Mac. They're really, really helpful to just learn the basics of cutting and to just learn the basics of how you can assemble a story. But if you can make the investment, it's worth looking at one of the other editing systems. Now, I've got a MacBook here. I won't be able to flip it around and show you what's on there probably, but it's got Final Cut X and it's got Premiere Pro, and both of those probably cost a similar amount. Premiere Pro you can get via Adobe's really great Creative Cloud program. If you're a student, you're going to get a discount on that, and I think it's something like £20 a month, and you essentially rent it. And what that means is you're going to get Premiere, you're going to get After Effects. If you're interested in doing anything with visual effects or green screening, you're really going to want something like After Effects. It's a really handy application, and as I said earlier, the best thing about YouTube, it's such a big community. If you're getting something like After Effects, there are tons of tutorial videos online that you can look for. And it's just finding those videos, learning the techniques, walking through it step by step and mastering them, and it's going to make a massive difference to your videos. So that's the Creative Cloud option, renting essentially from Adobe your editing software. And the benefit of that is they're going to update it. So when they release the next version, you'll be the first to get it. You'll keep paying the same amount that you pay at the moment. And like I said, if you're a student, you're going to be able to get a discount on that. Now, the other option that I recommend is Final Cut X, which is the Apple version, basically, of editing software. It's about £200, so euros.
Oh, God. 280.
Okay, I'm going to guess about 300 euros. But yeah, no, it's about £200, so you can check your local currency convert for that. But it's, I would say, pretty reasonable for the price. It's a really powerful editing tool, and it's very easy to use. If you have experience with iMovie, if you're already on a Mac, you are going to know how to use it very quickly. Exactly the same process. You import your footage, you see the clips as thumbnails, and then you just chop and change, edit in, and you've got your sequence there. Now, what's so good about these editing softwares is the third-party support for them. And what that means is it's not just Adobe that are creating plugins for Premiere, and it's not just Apple that are creating plugins for Final Cut. There's a whole community of filmmakers out there, and they're creating really good, really cheap ways that you can enhance the look of your footage. So, for example, Magic Bullet is a really quite famous one. It's a grading software application made by a company called Red Giant. Now, I think they make it for both Premiere and Apple, but if not, there's another company, Motion VFX, who make their own version for Final Cut X, and it is very cheap. Their version is called MLux or MLux 2, and it's about $30. So I guess in pounds, that's about £20, right? I'm not 100% sure, but you can check. But yeah, it's about $30, and it's really going to give you, if you don't know a lot about grading and you don't necessarily have the time to know a lot about it, or you're not that interested to know about it, it's essentially a drag and drop style of grading. So once you've got your footage in your editing program, you can get those third-party applications really cheap, just drop them on there, and you've got a blockbuster look, or you've got a film look, or a noir look. It's a really good way, if you don't have the lights, if you don't have the time, just to enhance the look and enhance the production value of your footage.
I'm going to add another option. It's very basic, but for someone who's starting with their own YouTube channel, it could be useful. Even within YouTube itself, there's a video editor. So you can pretty much, it's quite basic, but you can pretty much cut and do some basic editing things like adding text or. And what's really cool about that is that there is an audio library as well within YouTube with a long library of songs and sound effects that you can use completely for free. And you can basically use for your videos, and you can monetize all of those soundtracks without having to deal with copyright or anything
Yeah.
because they're completely royalty free. So that's that's also a great resource.
Yeah,
to
that's
go
really,
and pick like songs and put sound effects and
Yeah.
special effects like.
That's awesome, because actually I was getting onto
Oh, there you
the
go.
audio side of things. No, that's not just another way, again, if you've not got the investment in lighting, if you've got your camera but you don't have a lot of lenses, another way that you can just increase the look and the style of your production values in your video is through adding songs and music. And if you don't want to make your own songs, you will probably want to look for those free libraries, things that are already Creative Commons licensed. It's really important that you're not just sticking any song on there, because that could get you into a few issues with the legality of that. But there's places like the YouTube catalog, there's the Free Music Archive. Those resources are out there, so look for them, add that to your videos, put your songs into your editing program and just play around with it. It's really helpful, especially if you are doing the off-camera audio voiceover, to just build in music that fits with the theme of your film. Look at other people's videos, see how they use music to enhance tone, to enhance the emotional response. So a really good thing to do is watch a lot of film trailers, because trailers are they're just like a 3-minute version of the film. Basically, they're going to give you the highs and the lows, they're going to demonstrate all the coolest camera moves in there, and they're also going to show you how music and tone is used to enhance the enjoyment of a film. If you're getting access to these free tracks, you can do that, and it's literally going to cost you nothing, and you're really going to increase the production value of your video tenfold. So that's just another really good way to think about sound, especially if you are shooting things like documentary and you don't necessarily have the best sound recording equipment. You don't always need voice, you don't always need to be telling your story. Let the visuals speak for you. You're learning to be cinematographers now, so just let the visuals be told, through your camera work, through your editing choices, through your composition. All of those things don't have to cost any money, but they're all going to enhance the production values of your videos. So I think that's a really good point, actually, that you brought up, and I wouldn't have thought of it, so thank you very much for it. So yeah, the other option, and I have talked about it a few times, is your phones. A lot of people have iPhones and Android devices. There's a lot of editing applications out there. I have got iMovie on my phone. So if you don't have a MacBook, maybe you've got iMovie. I've got videos of my dad and of pizza, because those are probably my two favourite things. So you can just edit from your phone. If you're shooting on your phone, you can edit and upload straight to YouTube from your phone. It's really cool. If you've got an iPad, you can get Avid for iPad. Avid's another software suite that we've not really talked about. It's a little bit more expensive than Final Cut and Premiere Pro, but on your iPad it's like a couple of pounds. So everyone can probably make that sort of investment. And it's just really worth looking at it, because I just think if you're editing, if you're composing your shots, if you're shooting more than one angle, you're going to be able to really enhance your shots. We talked about Tanya Burr in the last series episode that we did. She uses a lot of jump cuts in her footage. So it's one long take, she's talking direct to the camera, but rather than giving you a 10-minute video or a 20-minute video that might be a bit overlong, she selectively chooses what to cut out. And that's, again, a really interesting stylistic choice, jump cuts. You don't have to be fancy with your edits. If you don't want to have a second camera angle like a GoPro or an iPhone, just edit the footage that you do have in a way that makes it more creative. Even things like filters, like we talked about with editing, just changing from maybe a color to a black and white shot. It's just all ways that you can enhance your stylistic choices and put your own stamp on your films, because that's really what you want to do, is create your own video persona, experiment with your own cinematography, and work on your own editing skills so that you're really going to stand out and start to build your own audience and engage with them. What do you think, Marco?
Well said.
Yeah, awesome. Do you have any questions about that?
Not on the spotlight.
Okay, cool. Well, I'm just going to recap a few of the lighting things that we talked about way back in episode 2. We did bring up some of these in episode 1 as well, so make sure that you've watched both of those. So lights are probably the easiest way that you're going to enhance the production value of your videos, and they are right across a range of prices, from literally a few pounds for a torch all the way up to hundreds of pounds for a professional lighting kit. And if you don't want to jump in straight away with that, I think LEDs are a really good place to start. We've got that one there. Can you pass it to me? Thank you. Yeah, we've talked about this a lot, the LED. It's a cold light, you're not going to hurt yourself. It's particularly helpful if if you have younger siblings that really want to be filmmakers. You can trust them around the LEDs, they're probably not going to hurt themselves. They are just a bank of lights, gives you a nice soft light, and they've got these little clips on there so you can add diffusion paper, you can add your filters, you can change the colour temperature, you can put pinks and greens and blues in there, you can do whatever you want. They're just a really good way to build up your look of your film, enhance the light, and have that really important spark in the eyes. Now, I think probably something like this you could get for about £30 or £40. They are the lower end of the LED spectrum. They do go all the way up to a couple of £100 for a really big bank of lights with a proper stand as well. But for starting out, this is really a perfect way to just have that bit of definition that's going to pull you out of your background, whatever it is, and make you really stand out. A couple of those, a couple of stands, you probably make them yourself. I mean, this is something that we were talking about just earlier before we started this session, actually. Again, the YouTube community is so good for helping you out with tips like this, and not just these sessions, although I really hope that you've taken a lot out of them. But, you know, there's a whole community out there making their own DIY equipment. We talked in session 2 about halogen lights, work lights, and they are a bit dangerous, but only because they burn so hot. But things like that, those are ideas that are being shared by the community every day. You just need to search for it. DIY film lighting, there's loads of options. We got a torch there. Now this one is pretty cool because it's a multicolored torch. So you've got a red, click it again, and you've got a green. I think the battery is, yeah, there we go, green. So, and then obviously once more, and you've got the light that you're probably most familiar with, which is just a nice clean white light. But you can also get work lights built along this same process, has more than one bulb, just a whole chunk of them there, and those are going to be a lot safer. They're designed for builders at night, but they're brilliant for spotlights. We shot a scene in week 2 that was was it week 2? It was probably week 3. That was a noir film where we had a big spotlight and we tried to show a hostage style situation lighting set up. If you had one of those, it's going to burn cold, it's not going to hurt you if you drop it, and it's going to be really cheap to buy. Now, the only thing is, as we did talk about before, these lights do have a slight blue tinge to them. They're not going to be 100% pure white light. It's not going to be daylight balanced at that price. I mean, this is probably a few pounds. So you're probably going to want to look at filters, but they're so cheap. It's really worth having a few filters. It's really worth learning what they do to light, how they affect the color, and how you can use that to really change light to match your scene, and also to just create interesting effects. So candlelight is another one that we talked about in our lighting session. Candlelight is virtually free. It's so cheap. You probably have some lying around the house. If not, go to a pound shop, go to somewhere that has them cheap, buy them in bulk. Candles, so long as you're safe with them, and I would really urge you to be safe with them, especially if you're shooting indoors, try and shoot outside with them. On a dark night, light up some candles, just see what you can do, different effects with lighting. And so long as you're being safe with them, you're going to have, be able to light your scenes in a really creative way without spending a lot of money. Yeah.
I do have a question now.
Yeah, go on.
Have we talked about tripods?
No, I really wanted to talk about tripods.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, because I did mention this in the last episode, but I never had time to finish. So the one piece of advice that I would have about a tripod, there are ways that you can balance your camera for not a lot of money. You can get cheap tripods. I've seen them, the photographic type that don't really have a panable head. But the tripod is probably the one place I would really urge you not to skimp on, to be honest. Yeah. You don't have to spend a lot, but you probably want to be spending over £100 on a tripod. Yeah. For my experience, when you buy a cheaper tripod, you end up having to buy another one, because the more you build onto your camera, the heavier your lenses get. Say you buy something like a 70 to 200 2.8 zoom, that's a really heavy lens. It's heavier than your camera, and your tripod isn't going to be able to take the weight. It's going to dip, and you'll see that in your shots. You won't be able to do a smooth pan, and particularly if you're not just vlogging, if you are doing things like filmmaking, if you're making music videos, you want to be able to have that fluidity of movement. So you want to look at something like a 501 DV Manfrotto tripod, or this Benro, who make very similar tripods but slightly cheaper because they're blue, not red. But there's all kinds of different brands out there that are making similar equipment designed for video use and not at a huge cost. But I think to start out with, particularly if you are vlogging, if you are shooting towards yourself, if you're not involving other people, you can probably do with, you know, a fairly cheap tripod. Just always look at the max load capacity. And what that means is the maximum weight that tripod is designed to support before things get a bit wobbly. Because if you get that right and you know what your camera weighs, you know what the heaviest lens you own weighs, you know what your camera weighs when it's got the sound kit, the lights on it, then you're going to be fine so long as you stick with those rules.
So you're saying that me piling up different chairs and books is
probably not the best idea, no.
Okay.
Although, you know, so long as you've got a good surface and you can get your shot, then it's fine to start out with whatever you've got. But if you're going to make an investment into a good camera, you're going to want a good tripod, because if something happens to it, it's going to be totally devastating.
And of course, if you're filming in mobility, you can still use something like this.
Yeah, exactly.
We saw it before.
Yeah, and these are really great. And I've actually seen things similar to this in pound shops, a lot smaller, but they're designed to just clip onto things. There's other ones that have this section it's kind of flexible, and you can get them that are filled with kind of this twisty tube material, and you can wrap it around things. So if you're really trying to get really creative with your shots, you want weird angles, you're going to be able to wrap that around lampposts, things like that, get those really strange angles, super high angles, bird's eye views as we call them, or just chuck it on the floor and get a worm's eye view. So it's, you know, it's all about being creative with the stuff that you've got. And if you are spending, think wisely about it. Do consult the YouTube community. Do see what's out there. I mean, we talked a bit earlier about making equipment out of the things that you've got. So we've not really talked a lot about moving camera shots in this series so far, but there are things like dollies. I've seen people use skateboards. So long as your camera's secure, you can do creative shots very cheaply with whatever you've got around the house. You know, there's...
Yeah, and I like that you were mentioning the power of community, because that's something that we always recommend creators to do, go out and collaborate with other YouTubers, right?
Absolutely.
Because, I mean, you might have a skill that I don't have, and or a camera that I don't have. And by, you know, putting together your skills, you can
Yeah, a lot of it is about thinking, about just ways that you can be creative, and if you don't have the answer, it is out there. You don't have to sit in silence and wonder what the answer is. You know, there are people you can ask. There's people out there making these films. There's people that you admire, that you want to emulate. Just talk to them. Talk to us. Obviously, we want you to engage with me in the comments. But, you know, just ask those questions, and there'll be videos that explain everything like that. I mean, we talked about PVC pipes used to make a dolly, which... you just pop some skate wheels either side, get one sort of bar that connects them, and then you've got something that you can rest your tripod on and get those smooth shots. It's a really cool trick, because anything that sort of emulates the big budget Hollywood films, and obviously a dolly move, you know, on a real high-end film, that's an expensive thing. You've got a proper dolly, somebody's sitting on it, it's got chairs, got 3 people moving it along. If it's just you and a couple of PVC pipes and it looks good enough, then you've created your own version of that for very little money. So it's really worth looking at those tutorial videos, looking at what you've got around the house, and just being creative with it, basically. And hopefully this series has really inspired you to do that. And I hope if you haven't watched the earlier videos that you will now, that you've heard all this stuff, because that's the most important thing. It's do what you can with what you've already got, and then work towards developing that kit.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, if you live around London, or you can travel to London, we have a great studio facility here. It's YouTube Space, and we do offer production workshops on a regular basis. So you can even come in and, you know, just attend half a day of production workshops with the experts here. If you don't live in London, or if you can travel to London, there are plenty of resources, educational resources on the Creator Academy online, so you can follow all of those you know, lectures online, and or you can keep rewatching our sessions over and over until you.
I mean, I do really think that there's a lot to be said for the community, and also for skill sharing. I think you mentioned it earlier, Marco. You might have something that somebody else doesn't have. So team up with sound recordists, team up with people that know about creating music but don't have the video side, and they want you to use their music in your productions. It's, you know, there's a lot of ways that you can get access to things that you don't have to personally invest in. So long as you're all sharing those skills, then you're going to meet people that have lights, and you might be the person that has the lens that they want. So it's all about looking into those connections and making those work for you. I mean, also the second-hand market, I talked earlier about the lenses that I own that are, you know, older lenses. There's so much out there that's second-hand, you know, even mics. You want to make sure that you're careful, and when you're shopping around, do your research, find out if something works. If it's really cheap, why is it cheap? But if it seems reasonable and you think, okay, this guy's got it and he said it works, you know, ask around. Somebody might have the same lens, they might have bought it secondhand, had no problems. You know, you don't have to get everything brand new. I think there's a tendency with film, particularly because it is a technological thing, that people think, well, I need to spend X amount straight away, go in straight for the brand new stuff. But you really don't need to do that. And also try stuff out. Again, this is something that's like quite easy to do in London, but I'm guessing that there are places to do this outside of London as well. Speak to your local rental shops, go to your camera shops, try things out, because as I've said a few times in this series, not every camera is right for one person. You really want to get to know the different kit out there, the different options that are available to you. And maybe you think, hey, you know, I really want this 5D3, but then you realize, well, actually, I'm going to be making loads of sports action videos. They're going to be out of focus constantly. You know, you try it out and you decide, actually, something like a handy cam is going to be way better for me, something like a GoPro is going to be better for me. So don't just stick to the cameras that you think you should have because you've heard those are the best, because there are definitely going to be things out there that suit your style of filming. Do your research, go to places, try things out, and just build from there. And it's a really fun journey that you're starting out on. Maybe some of you are already on it. And then just, yeah, skill share, learn from each other.
That is fantastic.
You have any more questions, Farko?
So I guess we're really at the end of our journey. It's been, you know, 4 weeks of, you know, intense work.
Yes.
I mean, I learned a lot, and I hope you guys did as well. Michelle, like, we started from the very basics of camera and sound. We move on to lighting, and then again the cinematography. So the really more advanced aspects of filming. And now with this session, we're kind of wrapping it all up with production on a shoestring. Yeah,
I mean, the one thing that I would say to sort of recap the whole message of this series really is just practice, 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 practice. And obviously, if you have watched all 4, or if you're watching this now and you're planning to go back and watch the other ones, take the test and get the letter of completion, because it's something that's going to motivate you in your filmmaking to keep learning more and learning smarter. It's not just about learning everything you can learn, it's just about learning the things that work for you. You might not have time to master lighting, but you might have a really good eye for shot composition. And like we talked about earlier, putting things in the frame that make the shot look nicer. Now, on a big budget film, you've got an art department to think about that for you. But if you're making shorts on your own, or if you're a vlogger, you just want to think about ways that you can just enhance the look and therefore the production values. And there's so many ways that you can do that without really spending a lot of money, or sometimes not even spending anything at all. So I really hope that if you've got anything out of this series, it's about going out there, exploring your kit, getting the right kit for you, and learning independently.
And also, don't be afraid of experimenting. Because, I mean,
absolutely.
YouTube is literally the best place to, you know, experiment, put your videos out there, and you're gonna get immediate feedback from the community, from all of your fans and subscribers, and you're gonna, you know, get immediate data from analytics. So you're gonna see immediately what works and what doesn't.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you can keep on progressing and improving along the way. So.
Yeah, awesome.
So I think that's all from us. If you actually watched the entire series of our production masterclasses, you're going to receive an email right after this live stream tonight with a quick test. Don't be afraid, it's just the 4 questions. If you answer correctly, you will also receive a letter of completion. And you also may qualify to receive a personalized consultation from one of the members of our team, one of our YouTube experts, to even further improve your channel. Yeah. And I think that's pretty much all for us. Thank you so much, Michelle, for
my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Fantastic journey. Yeah. It's been fantastic having you here. And so thank you guys for watching. and best of luck with your channels, and keep on improving those fantastic videos, and good luck.
And please do engage in the comments, engage with the other members of the community, keep practicing, remember the lessons that I've taught you and also the little homework assignments that you've had. Learn about lights, practice with your lights, just practice with anything that you've got at home, practice with your friends, and then just keep uploading content, get that feedback, just engage with the community. It's the best way that you're going to learn, and just good luck.
All right.
Thanks very much, guys.
Bye. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.